Hello there, and welcome to the next of our videos for the Power and Conflict series. This is Checking Out My History by John Agard, a very recent poem from 2007. And hopefully these three images should help you remember three of the key quotations from this poem. So what happens in Checking Out My History? Well, the speaker of the poem thinks about all the things he's learnt at school. Many of them, such as nursery rhymes, don't seem very important to him now. However, he never learnt about all the famous black people who have changed the world, like Toussaint Louverture and Mary Seacole, who we'll talk about later. He's so inspired by these people, he's decided to find out about them himself and to reconsider where he comes from and who he is, his own history and his own identity. So it's somebody thinking about what he learnt at school and history and what maybe he should have learnt. Here is some interesting information that might help you understand this poem. Three people mentioned in it. Toussaint Louverture fought off the French and made the island of Haiti independent from France. It was the first black republic, that is the first country with a president instead of a king or queen, where that president was a black person. Nanny the Maroon similarly fought against white power. She led slaves in Jamaica to escape and to found their own community. And Mary Seacole was a black British nurse who set up and ran her own hospital for wounded soldiers very successfully, even though she had been told not to do so. So there are three large figures in this poem who are very powerful black figures from history. Clearly I'm not going to read this poem because John Agard can do a much better job. So here is a reading of Checking Out My History.
Checking out me history. Them tell me what them want to tell me. Bandage up me eye with me own history, blind me to me own identity. Them tell me about 1066 and all that. Them tell me about Dick Whittington and Ecat, but Toussaint Louverture, you know, them never tell me about that. Toussaint, a slave with vision, lick back, Napoleon, battalion, and first black republic born. Toussaint, the thorn to the French. Toussaint, the beacon of the Haitian Revolution. Them tell me about the man who discovered the balloon and the cow jump over the moon. Them tell me about the dish, run away with the spoon, but them never tell me about Nanny the Maroon. Nanny, seafar, woman of mountain, dream, fire woman, struggle, hopeful, stream to freedom, river. Them tell me about Lord Nelson and Waterloo, but them never tell me about Shagga the Great Zulu. Them tell me about Columbus and 1492, but what happened to the Carib and the Arawak too? Them tell me about Florence Nightingale and Sheila, and how Robin Hood used to camp. Them tell me old King Cole was a merry old soul, but them never tell me about Mary Seacole. From Jamaica, she traveled far. To the Crimean War, she volunteered to go even when the British said no. She braved the Russian snow, a healing star among the wounded, a yellow sunrise among the dying. Them tell me what them want to tell me. But now I'm checking out me history. I carving out me identity. Tell me about 1066 and all that. Them tell me.
Okay, so some ideas that you might want to note down if you want to talk about this poem in a sophisticated way are here in the booklet that you have. For example, and for each one, you could pause the video here, read the definition and try and think, well, how does this relate to the poem Checking Out My History? The first one's been done for you. Creole, is a language that evolves from a mixture of different languages, for example Guyanese, where Guyana is where his parents are from, and English. So the poem is written in Creole because it's a mixture of languages that John Agard is familiar with. So you could pause now and try and apply these ideas to the poem. To look at some key quotes then, the repetition of "dem tell me" at the start of the poem. We always look at the first line. The repetition 3 times sounds very dull, very repetitive, not very inspiring. Certainly the person in this poem wasn't very inspired by the teaching they had. It's also a refrain. It's used several times in the poem. A refrain is like a chorus in a poem. So black students spend a lot of time being told again and again about white history. And also he uses phonetic spelling. He spells things how they sound, dem. So this shows the speaker is taking control right from the start. He's telling this story from his own point of view. He's not spelling things how he's been told to spell them, but how he wants to. Dem is also showing perhaps a us and them attitude. The speaker doesn't feel included in what they told him, so he calls them them, not us. A key image here is bandage up my eye with my own history. So this is a metaphor, of course, not a real bandage, but a bandage is used to heal usually, but here it's not being used for what it's for, it's being used to blind. Just like education isn't being used to educate him about what he wants to learn about. The pronoun me, meaning my in me I, shows how this affects him personally. He can't see the truth. He is blinded. And the adjective own in own history shows he feels history should belong to him and he wants to take it back, which he does do towards the end of the poem. So lots to talk about in this quote. But them no tell me about is also a refrain. It uses them tell me, but in a different structure. So it's showing the difference between what's taught and what's not taught. This is almost a kind of mini Volta in the poem. It's also negative. It has a no in it, which makes us wonder, why don't they teach us about this stuff? Perhaps we could think they are intimidated by black powerful figures from history, so they don't want to use them as an example. And finally, that last line, carving out me identity. The verb carving is violent. It involves destruction. Carving is removing something, so he wants to take a lot of this stuff, like the dish and the spoon, out of school. It's also permanent if you carve. He wants to make a permanent change to history and black history. The pronoun me in my identity, by the end of the poem, he has taken control from them, and his identity is starting to be his own. So I hope if you're revising this poem, those quotes are useful. You could use those to test yourself. And finally, if you want a slightly more demanding quotation to have a look at for higher grades, the idea of a hopeful stream to freedom river is a very complex image. The adjective hopeful could show how positive the influence of figures like Nanny the Maroon and Toussaint Louverture have been. The metaphor, a stream flowing into a river, could show how lots of figures like her join up into something much more powerful, a sort of alternative history of the countries that we know. And the fact this is natural imagery implies this is a natural process. It's the way things should be. Toussaint Louverture and Nanny the Maroon are real historical figures, and it's natural that we should consider them just like we consider, the famous figures from our history curriculum, like Winston Churchill or someone like that. The noun freedom has connotations of escape from slavery, perhaps literal. Black people have been slaves in the colonies of America and Britain, and also metaphorical slavery. We're a slave to what we learn at school. Perhaps we should break out of that. Okay, I hope that's useful, and please watch the other videos in this series.